Benny Carter had always seemed like the classic image of small-town masculinity. He was in his early 30s, with a rugged build he maintained through years of working long shifts at a busy auto shop. His hands were usually streaked with engine grease, and his wardrobe mostly consisted of oil-stained jeans, plain t-shirts, and steel-toed boots. The smell of gasoline clung to him so constantly that his girlfriend, Maya, used to joke that if she lost him in a crowd, she could close her eyes, take a deep breath, and track him down by the faint aroma of motor oil. Maya was the local librarian, a thoughtful woman of about the same age, witty and intelligent, with dark, curly hair that always seemed to be held in place by a dozen pens and pencils. The two of them made an unlikely pair. While Benny's world revolved around horsepower and torque wrenches, Maya's revolved around dusty shelves stacked with novels and reference books. Despite their differences, they had found in each other an unexpected companionship. Maya found Benny's down-to-earth energy refreshing, and Benny found Maya's clever observations surprisingly entertaining. They could sit around her tidy living room, where piles of books threatened to overwhelm her eclectic furniture, and get lost in conversation for hours. Maya had been watching Benny carefully these past few months, noticing subtle hints that he might have a hidden concern or a vague anxiety he wasn't ready to express. He sometimes hesitated during their conversations, chewing on the inside of his cheek as if deciding whether to reveal something. Maya, sensitive as she was, didn't push too hard. She figured he would share his worries when he felt ready, or perhaps he would talk about whatever weighed on his mind when the right moment arrived. One evening, as they were cleaning up the remnants of dinner in Maya's kitchen, she looked over at him thoughtfully. "You know," she said, her voice as casual as she could manage, "my birthday is in a couple of weeks. I was thinking about doing something different this year, something beyond the usual dinner and drinks around town." Benny flicked off the faucet and reached for a dish towel. "Oh yeah? What do you have in mind?" Maya shrugged, moving her hand in a playful, theatrical manner. "A masquerade ball in the big city. It's supposed to be really elaborate, with live music, dancing, and all sorts of outrageous costumes. I've never been, but I heard it's an event you can go wild with. No one knows who you are when you're wearing a mask. People do the most extravagant outfits. It's fancy, but fun." A quizzical smile crossed Benny's face. "A masquerade, huh? Like those old movies with masks and big dresses?" "Exactly," Maya replied. "It's my birthday, so I'd love it if you came with me. I know it's not exactly your scene, but there's something appealing about the idea of stepping out of who we are for one night. Don't you think? Maybe," she added with a spark in her eye, "you could come dressed as a woman. That'd be a riot." She let out a chuckle, nudging him gently with her elbow. "We'd walk around anonymously, and no one would suspect a thing." She intended it as a playful suggestion. She half expected Benny to snort and say something like, "as if," or to roll his eyes. But to her surprise, Benny just stood there for a moment, gripping the dish towel tightly. He attempted a half laugh, but it sounded a bit forced. Unaware of the turmoil racing in his thoughts, Maya added, "I'm kidding, by the way. You can dress any way you like. Although, I suppose it would be fun to see you try heels just once." A flutter of nervous excitement took hold of Benny, surging through his stomach and tightening his chest. He swallowed hard, then forced a casual laugh. "I'll think about it," he said, hoping that his face didn't betray the unusual spark the suggestion ignited. What Maya did not know, what practically nobody in his small town knew, was that Benny harbored a fascination with women's clothing. He had discovered it when he was a teenager, rummaging around the house when he was bored, stumbling upon his older sister's clothes. Something about the smooth fabrics and gentle shapes drew his curiosity. Over time, the curiosity became a secret he both dreaded and savored. He had never told Maya, He was terrified it would shatter the way she saw him or cause her to think of him as some kind of spectacle. And if word got around town, well, Benny didn't even want to imagine the gossip. A week passed, and Maya's birthday inched closer. Whenever they were together, Maya mentioned the masquerade ball only in passing, as though it were just another idea among many. But Benny, when he was alone, became consumed by the possibility. He weighed the logistics. Could he really pull off dressing as a woman entirely and go out in public that way? The mere thought made his heart pound. Yet that pounding was not purely from fear. There was another element too, an undeniable thrill. Late one evening, Benny sat in his dimly lit bedroom, the soft hum of passing cars drifting through the open window. He thought back to the few times he had tried on his sister's blouse or skirt. He remembered how he would stand in front of the mirror for a moment, feeling an odd mix of comfort and excitement. Then he'd hurry to take it off, terrified someone would walk in and see. This was his chance to bring that old clandestine fascination into the open, if only for a few hours behind a mask. Would Maya understand? He told himself that this could be nothing more than a one-time experiment. Finally, he decided he would do it. The next day, when he saw Maya at her place, he cleared his throat awkwardly and said, "About that masquerade, it might be kind of fun, to go a bit off the wall." She eyed him, intrigued. "Off the wall how?" "Remember that thing you said about dressing up? Maybe I'll show up as a woman," he said, trying to sound playful rather than anxious. Maya raised her eyebrows. "Seriously?" "Sure," Benny replied, trying to appear calmer than he felt. "Nobody from our town's gonna be there. What do I have to lose?" Maya grinned widely. "Oh, this is going to be amazing. We can hit up some costume shops or see if there's a place that rents outfits for masquerades. Also, we'll need to find you a mask. I'm excited to see how you plan to pull this off." In truth, Benny already had a rough plan. He knew that if he tried on a casual women's outfit, it would be too easily recognized as just a man in a skirt. He wanted to blend in so well that no one at the event would suspect a thing. The bold part of his mind whispered, this could feel genuinely freeing. He would choose a name. Bella, he decided. He had liked that name for years. It sounded both elegant and approachable, exactly what he wanted if he was stepping into that role. As the weekend rolled around, Benny and Maya made plans to drive into the nearest city, which was about an hour away. Maya wanted to find an ornate mask for herself, a bejeweled piece with feathers perhaps, and to help Benny search for a costume that would be flamboyant enough for a masquerade. Their day began bright and early, and the morning sun shone on the highway as Benny drove, occasionally tapping the steering wheel in a jittery pattern that betrayed his nerves. Maya glanced over at him. "You okay? You seem restless." Benny let out a small, tense laugh. "Guess I'm just excited. Never done anything like this before." "Me neither," Maya said. "Honestly, I can't wait. I love the idea of stepping out of who we are, even if it's just for a few hours." Benny opened his mouth to respond, but he closed it again, deciding it was better not to dive too deep into the thoughts swirling in his mind. He refocused on the road, feeling Maya's curious gaze but not quite ready to talk about his deeper reasons. They reached the city in the late morning and parked in a bustling downtown area. Maya guided them into a side street where a cluster of shops displayed mannequins in glittering outfits. They combed through various racks of costumes, some that looked too theatrical, others that seemed made for comedic effect. Finally, Maya found a flamboyant red gown with a fitted waist and a flowing skirt. She held it up against Benny, pursing her lips. "What do you think? Too much?" Benny hesitated, the bright color making him feel self-conscious. "Might be too flashy," he mumbled. "Flamboyant is what we want, though," Maya said. though she placed the gown back on the rack. "We'll know it when we see it." They moved along to another part of the store, where Maya pointed to a dark emerald dress, sleek and elegant, but not over the top. "What about that one?" she asked. "It's sophisticated, but it still stands out." Benny ran his fingers over the fabric, noticing how smooth it felt. "That's actually really nice," he murmured, almost forgetting to hide his enthusiasm. Maya winked at him. "Why don't you try it on?" The suggestion made him flush. Are you sure it's okay? I might need a dressing room in the back or something." Maya glanced around and saw that the store manager was busy rearranging some costumes. "We'll ask," she said. "I'm sure they get all sorts of people trying on all sorts of outfits here." Indeed, after a brief, somewhat awkward conversation with the manager, Benny found himself in a cramped dressing room, curtain drawn tight, standing in a pair of boxers as he carefully slipped the emerald dress over his broad shoulders. It felt snug in some places, but the fabric had enough give to accommodate him. When he finally got it on, he realized he would need padding in the chest area, not to mention a few other adjustments, but it looked unexpectedly right. He peered into the narrow mirror, heart thumping. It was a strange and exhilarating sight, his large frame decked out in a sleeveless gown that hugged his body. He felt a rush of warmth in his face, accompanied by a swirl of conflicting emotions. There was the familiar fear he knew so well, but also that intangible spark of excitement. "How does it look?" Maya's voice called through the curtain. Benny swallowed. "It's, I'll come out." He slid back the curtain, stepping into the open area. Maya gazed at him, eyes wide with surprise. A smile inched across her lips. "Wow," she said softly. "It fits pretty well, actually. You look, dare I say, quite good." He shifted awkwardly. "I'm not exactly a runway model, but yeah, it's not bad." Maya circled around him, considering the length. "We'll need shoes, though. Definitely something with heels, even if just a little. And I can help with hair and makeup. Maybe we'll get a wig that goes with the color of the dress. But you can pull it off, Benny." He felt a rush of relief. "I honestly wasn't sure how you'd react." Maya shrugged, a sparkle in her eye. "It's a masquerade. You're supposed to have fun. Honestly, I'm proud you're going outside your comfort zone for my birthday. That's sweet of you." She gave him a playful smirk. "And if you weren't my rugged mechanic boyfriend, I'd say you'd pass as a stylish woman in dim lighting at least." They both laughed. Although Maya had no idea how close to home this was for Benny, he allowed himself to appreciate her open-mindedness, relieved he wasn't getting judged. They purchased the dress, a matching wig, and a half-face mask in a dark bronze shade. Maya also insisted on buying some accessories, a set of earrings, clip-ons to avoid any need for piercings, a simple necklace, and a pair of black heels with a modest height that Benny hoped wouldn't be too impossible to walk in. By the time they were done, several hours had passed, and Benny's wallet was lighter, but his sense of cautious anticipation had grown. On the car ride back, as the sun set behind them, Maya talked excitedly about the ball. She described a rumor she'd heard about a grand waltz that kicked off the night, then an upbeat band that took over later. She daydreamed aloud about dancing in her elegant outfit. Benny chimed in occasionally, but mostly listened, imagining how he would feel in that emerald dress, moving among strangers who would see him as Bella, not Benny. It was liberating and terrifying all at once. The next week felt like a slow, mounting crescendo. Benny worked his usual hours at the auto shop, eyes on the clock as he counted down the days to the ball. Every so often, one of his coworkers would slap him on the back and make a wisecrack about how the real party was at the local sports bar. Benny would nod and laugh along, all the while thinking about the hidden garment bag in his closet at home. Finally, the day arrived. Maya spent the afternoon at her own place, preparing her look, a flowing silver gown, a sparkling mask, and an elaborate updo for her curly hair. Benny stayed home, feeling as nervous as if he were about to give a speech in front of thousands. He showered, shaved carefully, even parts of his body he never normally bothered to shave, then laid out the emerald dress on his bed. He took out the wig, setting it on a makeshift stand, and practiced walking in the black heels. More than once, he nearly toppled over. Each time, he steadied himself with a grim laugh, determined to keep going. When the time came for makeup, he felt utterly out of his depth. He had watched a few tutorial videos in secret, but theory was vastly different from practice. With shaking hands, he attempted foundation, eyeshadow, and a light gloss on his lips. The biggest challenge was blending it enough so that it didn't look messy. By the time he finished, he felt he had improved, though it was probably far from professional. He carefully placed the wig on his head, adjusting it until it looked aligned with his forehead and ears. He tugged the emerald dress over his frame, making sure every seam was in the right place. Then he added the necklace and the earrings, the final touches that made Bella a reality. Stepping in front of the mirror, Benny barely recognized himself. The broadness of his shoulders and the thickness of his arms were still somewhat visible. The wig flowed around his neck, softening his face. The mask, half covering his features, hid just enough to make him unrecognizable. The dress flattered him in a way he never expected. He felt a strange wave of both embarrassment and a kind of relief, as if for one evening he was letting himself experience something he had denied for years. After taking a moment to breathe, he slipped on a coat that he hoped would conceal most of the dress from the neighbors' prying eyes. Then he tottered down the stairs of his small apartment building and headed to where Maya was waiting in her car, parked discreetly near the corner. He slid into the passenger seat, and Maya stared openly for a moment. "Wow," she said, eyes wide. "Benny, you look fabulous." He let out a shy laugh. "Well, I'm trying. Hope no one recognizes me." "I doubt it," Maya said. "You don't look anything like yourself. I mean, I can kind of tell it's you if I look really closely. But the wig and mask do wonders. That color on you is amazing, by the way." She reached for his hand. "Ready?" "Yeah," he managed. "Let's do this." The drive to the venue felt surreal. Maya chatted about how excited she was, how she'd wanted to attend this ball for years. Benny responded, but his mind kept drifting to the idea that soon he would step out of this car and walk among strangers, perhaps even some folks who might be from nearby towns. He prayed no one he knew would be in attendance. But as the city lights came into view, the low hum of energy around them began to replace some of his fear with something more electrifying. They arrived at a grand hotel that had been transformed for the Masquerade. Golden lights lit up an entrance draped with velvet banners, and a wide staircase led to intricately carved double doors. People in extravagant costumes floated up those steps, some in ball gowns, some in tuxedos with elaborately decorated masks. The entire spectacle looked like a scene from an old painting. Benny and Maya parked in the adjoining lot and approached arm in arm, the night air cool against their coats. "Just walk slowly," Maya murmured. "You're doing great." Benny nodded, remembering to keep his posture a little straighter, the way he had seen women do when wearing gowns and heels. They reached the doors where attendants checked their tickets. Once inside, a wave of warm air and lively music enveloped them. Chandeliers sparkled overhead, and the hum of conversation mingled with the clink of glasses. Everywhere Benny looked, there were people dressed in imaginative outfits, their faces hidden behind masks. Maya guided him to a quieter corner near the grand ballroom to shed their coats. She slipped hers off and revealed a silver gown that shimmered under the lights. Benny followed suit, letting the emerald dress glow. A few onlookers glanced his way appreciatively. More than once, Benny saw admiring eyes settling on him, though whether they realized he was a man or not, he couldn't tell. "You're blending in," Maya whispered, sounding proud. The music shifted to a spirited classical piece, and couples began to drift onto the polished dance floor. Laughter drifted through the air, and a few groups gathered around tall tables, chatting in low voices. Benny felt a slight tug on his arm. Maya beamed at him. "Dance with me?" He nearly balked. I don't know how to dance like this." "Doesn't matter," she said, pulling him gently. "If you step on my toes, I'll live. Trust me, half these people are just winging it." Benny allowed himself to be led onto the floor. The swirl of dresses, the flash of masks, and the sweep of the music created a dreamy scene. His steps were tentative at first. He found it awkward to move in the heels and the long skirt, but Maya giggled softly and leaned her head close. "Just relax," she said. "You look good." As they waltzed, or attempted to, Benny felt surprisingly comfortable. The swirling skirt and the faint rustle of the satin underskirt gave him a small thrill. Now and then, Maya would guide him with a subtle gesture. If he stumbled, they both laughed. No one seemed to pay them any mind. Everyone else was too caught up in their own masquerade fantasies. At one point, they paused for a breather at the edge of the dance floor, and Maya introduced Benny to a woman in a lavish burgundy gown she'd just met. The woman complimented Benny's dress, saying it was absolutely divine. Benny mumbled a thank you in a slightly higher pitch, hoping his voice didn't give him away. The woman smiled graciously, completely unaware of his secret. Emboldened by the successful dance and the anonymous compliments, Benny allowed himself to feel something akin to joy. He was Bella here, and nobody could mock him or belittle him. It was an experience that felt both precious and fleeting. Hours passed with the same sense of surreal wonder. Benny and Maya sampled appetizers, mingled with a few friendly strangers, and even joined a large dance circle when a more modern band took over. Now and then, Benny would remember that he was still a mechanic from a small town who spent most of his day elbow-deep in car engines, and he'd feel a spark of disbelief. But he kept going, letting the music and the moment carry him. Shortly after midnight, the mood shifted. The lights dimmed slightly, and the music became softer, creating an intimate atmosphere for slower dances. Benny and Maya drifted into each other's arms again, swaying gently. Though it felt odd to be the taller one in a pair of heels, Benny tried to focus on the warmth of the moment. He felt safe here. All at once, Maya stiffened in his arms. "Hey," she whispered near his ear, her voice tense. "Isn't that Jake Watkins from your town, over there near the buffet table?" Benny's heart lurched. He subtly glanced over Maya's shoulder. Standing about 20 feet away was indeed Jake Watkins, a guy who frequented the bar near Benny's auto shop and one of the biggest gossips in their small community. Jake was dressed in a suit and wearing a half mask, but his distinctive goatee gave him away. Benny suddenly felt hot and cold all over. If Jake recognized him, the rumor mill would explode. "Act normal," Maya hissed, calmly turning Benny so his back faced Jake. "He hasn't seen us yet, I think." Benny tried to steady his breathing. "This is exactly what I was afraid of." "We'll just keep some distance," Maya said, trying to sound reassuring. "Stick with me. If we see him coming our way, we'll slip into the other room." Trying to maintain his composure, Benny let Maya guide him toward the far side of the ballroom, where large glass doors opened onto a candlelit terrace overlooking a small garden. They stepped outside for a moment, the cool night air a welcome reprieve from the crowded dance floor. Benny's legs were trembling, and it wasn't just from the heels. Maya wrapped an arm around him. "We've been here for hours, and this is the first time we've spotted someone from our town. If we stay alert, we can avoid him." I can't believe this." Of all people, Jake, Benny said in a hushed tone. He's the last person I want finding out. He'd never let it go. Maya nodded, her expression serious. We'll be cautious. Let's try to enjoy the rest of the night. If it gets too risky, we can slip out early. But I don't want your evening ruined. She started to lead him back inside, but Benny hesitated, swallowing hard. No, you're right. I'm not about to let him ruin this. They returned to the edge of the ballroom, carefully scanning for Jake. He was still near the buffet table, talking to a couple of masked guests and occasionally sipping from a champagne flute. Benny felt slightly better knowing they had spotted him first. The two of them kept a good distance, blending in with groups on the other side of the room, sampling desserts, and chatting quietly with people who approached. Every now and then, Benny would glance over. Jake looked quite comfortable, evidently here with a date. Benny felt his nerves settle. With so many guests in full costume, Jake would likely never suspect that Bella was actually Benny Carter. As the night wore on, the music picked up once more, and the final stretch of the masquerade began. Benny and Maya shared a laugh when they joined the lively crowd dancing in the center of the ballroom. The energy was infectious, a swirl of masked faces, swirling skirts, and dapper suits. Benny could feel that exhilarating sense of liberation again, overshadowing the scare from earlier. Finally, well after midnight, the band played its last song, and a chorus of applause and cheers filled the air. The masquerade was coming to its end, and guests started to drift out into the foyer and beyond. Benny found himself reluctant to leave. He hadn't expected to feel so at ease in this borrowed persona. He could tell Maya was thrilled too by the shine in her eyes. They retrieved their coats and headed out with the flow of people, stepping into the crisp early morning air. The golden lights outside the hotel glowed against the darkness, and the hush of the city night surrounded them. Benny and Maya walked quietly to her car, still riding a high from the excitement. After slipping inside, Benny carefully removed the wig from his head, running a hand through his flattened hair. Maya caught his eye. "You okay?" she asked quietly. Benny sighed, gazing at the wig in his lap. "I honestly don't know how to put it into words," he said. "That was intense." She nodded, starting the engine. "I thought you were amazing tonight, seeing you so fearless. Well, I know you were nervous, but you really went for it." Benny leaned his head back against the seat. "I was terrified half the time, but I also liked it. A lot. More than I expected." Maya glanced over, a soft understanding in her eyes. "You can talk to me, you know. You seemed happy out there." He didn't respond right away. Instead, he stared out the window as the city lights blurred by. Eventually, he said, "There's more to it than just wearing a costume." Maya placed a gentle hand on his knee. "If you ever feel like sharing, I'm here." They drove in a comfortable silence for a while, the hum of the car lulling them both as the sky began to lighten with the approach of dawn. When they finally reached Benny's apartment, he thanked Maya for the night, his face still caked in half-worn makeup. The moment felt oddly intimate, like he had shown her part of himself he'd never shown anyone before. She touched his cheek fondly. "Happy birthday, Maya," he said, managing a smile. "I hope you had a good time." "I had a wonderful time," she replied. "And you were a big part of that." They shared a brief kiss, cautious so as not to smear his remaining lipstick. Then Benny headed up to his apartment. He stripped off the dress, removed his makeup, and hung the emerald gown carefully. As he collapsed into bed, he wondered if he'd ever have the courage to wear it again, or if it would simply remain in his closet, a secret memento of one spectacular night. When morning came, Benny woke feeling as though he had dreamed the entire thing. His body ached from dancing in heels, his mind still buzzed with the memory of swirling music and masked strangers. part of him wanted to talk about it with Maya in detail, but another part recoiled, fearful of revealing just how important the experience had been. He went about his day off quietly, alternating between thoughts of the ball and a creeping worry about the possibility of Jake Watkins having seen him. Each time that worry surfaced, he reminded himself that Jake hadn't recognized him, or at least hadn't confronted him. Maybe he had gotten away with it. Later that afternoon, Maya dropped by with a takeout bag in hand. She found Benny at his kitchen table sipping coffee that had gone cold. "I brought burgers," she announced, setting the bag down. "Figured you might be hungry. How are you doing?" He let out a slow breath. "Still feel weird, if I'm honest." Maya pulled out a chair and sat. "Weird how?" Benny tapped the table absent-mindedly. "I can't stop thinking about last night. Walking around in that dress felt liberating, even though I was nervous all the time. I don't really know what to do about it." Maya reached for his hand. "You don't have to do anything necessarily. You can just let it be an experience. Unless..." She trailed off, giving him space to elaborate if he wanted. He pressed his lips together. "It's not just the ball. I've liked women's clothing since I was younger. It's not about jokes or pranks. Something about it just resonates. I've never talked about it with anyone. I've been afraid." His voice trembled slightly, and Maya squeezed his hand. "Thank you for telling me," she said softly. He mustered the courage to meet her gaze. "You're not weirded out?" She smiled gently. "No, I'm not weirded out. Surprised, sure, but I'm not judging you. That masquerade was a hint that you had a side you wanted to explore. I just didn't realize it mattered this much to you." Relief coursed through him, enough to make his eyes sting with emotion. He quickly turned his head away, not wanting to lose it in front of her. After a moment of silence, he cleared his throat. "I don't know what it means for us. I don't want you thinking I'm not the guy you thought I was." Maya stood and moved behind him, draping her arms around his shoulders. "You're still Benny. The Benny I know is caring, loyal, and honest, even if it takes him a while to open up. That hasn't changed. The only difference is that now I see there's more to you than I realized." He leaned his head back gently, resting against her arm. He didn't speak, but he felt a slight sense of comfort. Eventually, Maya slid back into her seat. "Look," she said, "maybe you don't need all the answers right now. If you want to explore it more, we can figure something out, step by step." "Step by step," he echoed. "That might be best." They spent the rest of the afternoon quietly, talking in fits and starts, sharing the meal Maya had brought. Benny felt a strong gratitude for Maya's willingness to listen. If anything, it made him appreciate her more. Back at the auto shop the next day, Benny fumbled through a routine tire change, his mind wandering to the events of the weekend. He was so distracted, one of his co-workers teased him about it. "Hey, Carter," the guy said, wiping sweat from his brow. "You got your head in the clouds or something?" Benny forced a grin. "Guess I'm just tired. Didn't get much sleep." "Big night?" his co-worker joked. "Thought I saw your girlfriend's car the other evening. You two partying it up?" "Something like that," Benny murmured, leaving it at that. He didn't want to open the door to any real questions about his weekend. He just hoped that if Jake Watkins had recognized him, even the slightest bit, he'd keep his mouth shut. But so far, everything seemed quiet. Over the next few weeks, Benny wrestled with a tug-of-war in his head. Part of him wanted to completely lock away the memory of Bella, to tuck that dress into the depths of his closet and pretend it had been a one-time adventure. Another part of him yearned to experience that feeling again, the sense of freedom he got when he was able to express a side of himself that he had kept hidden. He missed the swirl of the skirt, the soft brush of fabric, the anonymity of the mask. Maya sensed his struggle but she didn't pressure him. She invited him over sometimes and quietly asked if he felt like experimenting. Occasionally, Benny would try on a blouse or a skirt in her apartment, heart pounding the whole time, and Maya would give him a supportive smile. Each small step felt both exciting and daunting. One evening, while they were relaxing on Maya's couch, she nestled against him with a book in her hand. Suddenly she spoke. "Do you ever think about going out again, but not necessarily to a big masquerade? Just someplace else?" Benny gave a short laugh. "Without a mask, you mean? That sounds too risky." "Maybe, or maybe not," Maya ventured. "We could go to another city. We wouldn't even have to do anything crazy. Could be as simple as going to a coffee shop after dark." His pulse quickened at the thought. "That would be a huge step." Maya nodded. "We don't have to decide anything right now, but I thought I'd mention it." He appreciated her gentle approach. She was offering him choices rather than pushing him to do something he wasn't ready for. "I'll think about it," he said quietly. Another month passed, and the memory of the ball lingered like a pleasant echo in Benny's mind, though the fear of being discovered never fully subsided. Then, one late afternoon, as he was finishing up at the auto shop, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Turning, he faced Jake Watkins, the very person he'd been anxious about. Jake wore a casual grin, a baseball cap askew on his head. "Hey, Carter," Jake said with an easy familiarity. "Got a minute?" Benny nodded, wiping his hands on a rag. "What's up?" "I got something I need looked at," Jake said, waving vaguely toward his car. "Engine's making a noise. But hey, also meant to say, I saw someone at that masquerade in the city a while back. Swear he looked just like you, but it was a lady, so I figured it couldn't be." Benny felt his stomach drop. He forced a casual chuckle. "Oh yeah? Must have been one good-looking woman then." He tried to keep his voice even, but his heart pounded. Jake let out a bark of laughter. "Exactly what I said. And her friend looked a bit like your girlfriend too, except, all dressed up. Small world, huh?" His smile didn't waver, but there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. Benny's mind raced. "Probably just a couple that happened to look like us. I mean, I hear that was a big event, lots of folks from all over." Jake shrugged. "Yeah, guess so." He didn't sound entirely convinced. "Anyway, I'm just messing with you. People do funny things at those city parties, from what I hear." Benny nodded, doing his best to appear untroubled. "So, about your car." Jake launched into a description of the suspicious noise. Benny listened, nodded, and promised to give it a check in the shop. The conversation ended, and Jake left, seeming in good spirits, but Benny's nerves were jangled. He told himself that Jake couldn't prove anything. Even if he suspected, there was no firm evidence. That evening, Benny walked into Maya's home with a heavy heart, explaining the encounter. "He knows something's up," he muttered. Maya shrugged, trying to keep him calm. "He can't confirm anything. You were wearing a mask. Besides, is it really that big of a deal if he found out?" He sighed, taking a seat on her couch. "In a small town like ours, word spreads, and the idea of how people would talk about me, about us, that scares me." Maya sat beside him, resting her hand gently on his shoulder. "If it gets out, then we deal with it. But right now, there's no reason to panic." Benny nodded, though his stomach still felt tight. He reminded himself that he couldn't control every rumor or speculation. Time rolled on, and while Jake's insinuations bothered Benny, life returned to its normal rhythm. He kept working on cars. Maya kept managing the library. They spent their off hours together, growing closer with each conversation. Sometimes Benny would talk about women's fashion, and Maya would smile and offer him a chance to try on something she'd picked up at a thrift shop. Bit by bit, it became a quiet ritual, one that both excited and unnerved Benny. However, he couldn't help feeling that a single night at the Masquerade had changed something fundamental. He had tasted the possibility of letting that hidden side see the light of day, and he wasn't entirely sure he could be satisfied hiding it forever. The question loomed: could he incorporate that part of himself into his life in a way that felt honest yet safe? Late one night, while the two of them lay side by side in bed, still fully clothed, sharing quiet conversation, Maya turned toward him. There's a big difference between locking something away and managing it in a healthy way. He stared at the ceiling. You think I should be more open? She pressed her lips together, hesitant to push him. I just think it's going to be hard for you to pretend you never felt this. Last night we were looking at that old photograph of me in my prom gown, and I could see it in your face. You're torn. He closed his eyes. I am. Maybe we should plan another weekend in the city, even if we just stay in a hotel away from everyone. Give yourself room to breathe and decide what you really want. If dressing as Bella is something that matters deeply, I'm not going to run away from it. But we have to figure this out together. The offer stirred gratitude and fear within him. He slipped an arm around her. Okay, he whispered. Maybe we can do that. Over the next few days, he mulled it over. Then, one evening, he looked at the emerald dress still hanging in his closet. In a surge of determination, he turned to Maya. Let's do the weekend. I don't know what comes next, but I think I need the space to see if last time was just a one-off thrill, or if this is something more permanent. They booked a modest hotel in the city for the following weekend. Maya helped Benny pack a small bag that included the items he'd need for Bella. The drive up felt familiar, reminiscent of their trip for the Masquerade, but this time their goal was different. They weren't going to hide among a throng of masked revelers. They were simply going to a new environment to see how it felt for Benny to be Bella without the fear of running into someone he knew. When they arrived at the hotel, a modern establishment in a busy downtown area, Benny's heart was already pounding. They checked in without fanfare. The moment they stepped into their room, king-size bed, simple decor, a view of the city lights through a large window, Maya turned to him. No pressure, she said softly. We can go out, or we can stay in. Your call. He paused, his gaze drifting to his bag. Maybe I'll get changed first. Maya nodded, stepping into the small seating area near the window to give him some semblance of privacy. Benny took out the wig, the makeup bag, and the emerald dress. His hands trembled as he prepared himself. It was a more conscious, deliberate choice than the Masquerade. He wasn't hiding behind an anonymous event. He was simply deciding to let Bella exist. After a while, he emerged, feeling a swirl of apprehension. Maya turned and her expression lit up. You look lovely, she said, standing to take in the sight. She was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, which made the contrast even sharper. Benny swallowed hard. You sure you're okay going out in public with me? Like this? Maya approached, running her fingers over the fabric of the dress. I want you to be comfortable, but yes, if that's what you want, we'll go somewhere discreet. They chose a small coffee shop a few blocks from the hotel. It was nearing dusk, and the streets were busy enough that no one gave them more than a fleeting glance. Benny clung to Maya's arm as they strolled, the gentle click of his heels on the pavement a constant reminder of the risk he was taking. His heart raced, but in a different way than at the Masquerade. Now there was no mask. A wig and makeup hid portions of his features, but if someone stared closely, they might see a man in a dress. Yet none of the passers-by seemed to pay them any mind. Inside the warm glow of the coffee shop, a handful of patrons chatted softly or worked on laptops. Benny and Maya slipped into a corner booth. He ordered tea, his voice quivering a bit, but still pitched just high enough to not draw immediate attention. The barista didn't bat an eye. Maya beamed encouragingly. They sipped their drinks, hands occasionally brushing. Benny's nerves were on edge. But he also felt something else, a renewed sense of that relief he'd once felt. There was something about sitting in a public place as Bella that made him feel like he was no longer hiding himself from the entire world. Maya leaned across the small table. "How do you feel?" she asked quietly. Benny exhaled, noticing a slight tremor in his hands. Terrified, but also strangely okay. "No one's pointing or laughing. They're leaving us alone." She nodded, reaching to give his hand a gentle squeeze. "That's how it should be." The rest of the evening passed gently. They visited a bookstore, wandered a few more blocks, then returned to the hotel. Not once did anyone confront them, and Benny's confidence grew bit by bit with each step. By the time they finally closed the door to their room, Benny sank onto the bed, removing his heels with a wry laugh. "I forgot how much these kill your feet." Maya leaned down and massaged his ankle softly. "Heels can be rough." They gazed at each other, the tension between them both intimate and tender. It was a milestone, sharing this aspect of life that Benny had kept secret for so long. Slowly they changed out of their clothes and settled down to sleep, their arms around each other in the dim light. Over the weeks that followed, Benny began to feel that a single masquerade ball had, indeed, altered his world. Though he still feared small-town gossip, he had taken real steps to explore that side of his life, with Maya's support. Now the question remained, would he keep it all under wraps, continuing to present himself as the same old Benny in public, while occasionally slipping away to the anonymity of a city hotel? As of now, he still didn't know if he was prepared to face the fallout if the entire town discovered Bella. But for the moment, he had found a cautious way forward, one where he was no longer completely stifling that part of himself. With Maya at his side, offering him gentle reassurance, Benny felt that maybe, just maybe, his life could hold more than one version of who he was: the grease-stained mechanic who loved fast cars, and the person who felt an undeniable spark whenever he ran his hands over the smooth fabric of a new dress. He knew that the journey ahead might be full of complications and difficult conversations, but at the very least, he had discovered he could share it with someone who didn't run from him, who didn't mock him, and who didn't see him as lesser. That alone gave him reason to believe he wouldn't let this part of himself slip away into hiding again. The emerald dress and the memory of that masquerade would serve as a reminder. He could choose, at least sometimes, to be Bella, and in those moments, he could be just a bit freer. And so, in the soft hush of his small apartment after another day of labor at the auto shop, Benny found himself standing in front of a mirror. In one hand, he held the bright red rag he used to wipe away engine grease. In the other, he held the edge of a soft, feminine blouse he'd gotten at a discount store. He gazed at his reflection, wondering which version of himself he would bring forth today. For now, no final answers came. But the story wasn't over, and Benny took comfort in knowing that, at least, he could see the shape of a path opening before him, shaped by the acceptance and generosity of a partner who stood beside him no matter what he wore.
Did you like the story? Hit that like button and tell me what you thought in the comments. Do you want to hear more stories? Subscribe and hit the bell. For exclusive content and early access, check out our Patreon. You can find the link in the description, or you can watch any of the videos shown on my right. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.